A DAC, or digital to analog converter, is one of the easiest and fastest ways to make your hi-fi system sound better for all of your digital sources, like streaming, or your TV, or a CD player / transport. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the best DACs at every price, in my opinion. If you follow the channel at all, you probably know my favorite, inexpensive. This is the least expensive DAC that I love, that I would put my stamp of approval on. It's Cheap Audioman approved. It's the SMSL SU1. Comes in at $79.99. Very small little DAC, about the size of a deck of cards and a half. 1.5 deck of cards. Speaking of Deca, operates off of Delta Sigma. Delta sounds like Deca, kind of. Deca means 10. Delta means differences, maybe. It uses the very popular AKM 4493S chipset. Now, chipsets really don't matter as much as the analog output section of a DAC when it comes to how they sound. And there are other SMSL DACs that use an AKM 4493S chipset that sound terrible. I actually made a joke about the S standing for sibilance. Sibilance is ch and S is. However, the AKM 4493S in the SMSL SU1 sounds really, really good. On the back, you have a USB-C input, which also powers the device, 5 volt. You also have an optical in, a coaxial in, and on the back, a single set of RCAs. This is a fixed voltage output device, which means you are not going to be changing volume with this device. You'll have to change the volume on your preamp or your amplifier, something like a Fozzy Audio ZA3. So if you're looking for your first DAC, a budget DAC, a DAC for another room, but you don't want to compromise on sound quality, the SMSL SU1 should be the DAC that you're looking very hard at. It's $80. That's crazy. Next up, a fairly recent entrance on my favorite DACs is the Topping D50-3. One of the first videos I ever made on this channel was on the Topping D50-2, maybe? I can't remember. Anyway, this one has dual Sabre ES9039Q2M, which is a really good DAC chip. Muy pequeño. Very small. I just did the review, but I liked it so much that I gave it away to one of my patrons. This one does have a remote control. So if you want to control volume from the DAC on an amplifier like a Fozzy Audio ZA3 and IEMA A07 Max, something like that, you don't have to get up and actually move the volume knob because this comes with a remote control. This uses 2 chips, so you have one chip doing the left channel, one chip doing the right channel. Also, if you're into Bluetooth, which is fine if you are, I'm not casting any judgments here. If you're into Bluetooth, this has LDAC Bluetooth. But remember, if you want to get the highest resolution from the LDAC codec, your devices are going to have to be LDAC sending, LDAC receiving. So you're going to have probably an Android device that has LDAC Bluetooth codecs already installed and operating. This also has balanced outputs in the form of TRS connectors. Also has single-ended RCA outputs. Has a separate USB-C input, so it's powered off of 5 volts again. But you don't have to share the same input to use your computer on the D50-3. Also has an optical input, a coaxial input, and a 12-volt trigger. So there are some of these small Class D amplifiers that have 12-volt inputs. So as soon as you power on your D53, it can automatically power on an amplifier or any other device that can be powered on with a 12-volt trigger. Very tiny, has a little display on it, and has a bunch of different filters if you want to play with those. But it's a great sounding, very clean. I don't feel like it's as dynamic as the SU1, which is quite a bit cheaper, but it does sound very good. Probably a little bit more articulate, a little bit more detailed on top. $230. Not too shabby. The Schiit Multi-Bit comes in at $299. So this is the Modi Multi-Bit. Multi-Bit is a bit of a different way of doing the analog to digital conversion. It's not quite R2R, which is the real old school way, which is awesome, and we have some of those DACs on the list too. Kind of like a Delta Sigma and R2R combination. And Schiit has been doing multi-bit for a while in DACs like the Bifrost. The Modi Multi-Bit has been around for a long time, but it's been in and out of stock. Now you can get it whenever you want to. Very balanced sounding DAC and a little bit more open, a little bit more air than some of the other Schiit DACs that I've heard. And one of the things that jumped off the page for me with the multi-bit was the soundstage. Larger, more engaging. Made in Texas. If you don't know much about Schiit, they're a great company to deal with. No volume control on this one either. So you're gonna have to control volume from your amplifier or a preamp. Love it, love it, love it. $299. Another made in the USA product. This time it's in Florida, the Geshelli Labs J2 or J3 at this point. There's a little bit of a price difference. You can get a J2 with a socketed board, which means you can change out the op amps, have a little bit of freedom with the way that the thing sounds, the thing being the DAC sounds. If you don't get the USB input, you can save about $50 or $60. So if you're only using optical, if you're only using coaxial, you can forego that USB connection. Another DAC with a set voltage, so you're not controlling the volume. You may see a bit of a theme here. Personally, I like DACs that don't control the volume. I know that's not for everybody. I know that that's not as convenient. But that's the type of DACs that I like. For whatever reason, I think they sound better. I could just be making things up in my head. A bunch of different options for how you want this thing to look. You can get it in acrylic. You can get it with an aluminum case. You can get it with a wood case. Obviously, any of those choices are going to impact the price. But for around $300 to $400, you can get an excellent sounding DAC. My personal preference is the AKM 4493. There is also an option for an AKM 4499, which is a step up. Then you have a bunch of different options for op amps. What I would do is get one with the Texas Instruments op amps and then save up a little bit more. Maybe check out Sparkos. Sparkos is my favorite. You can also check out Burson. You can also check out other op amps from TI and have a lot of fun. Great DAC, made in the USA. Interesting and unique looks, made by 3 generations of fine humans down in the great state of Florida. It's hot down there. This is a differential DAC, which means fully balanced. It also has an HDMI ARC on it. It also has an analog input, 2 actually, 1 balanced and 1 RCA or single-ended. So this is kind of like, not kind of like, it is a preamp. Fully balanced differential outputs, as I mentioned before. USB input, HDMI ARC input, 2 optical inputs, 2 coaxial inputs, internal power supply, comes in at $800. Also has a trigger in and a trigger out. Uses a Sabre ESS 9038 Q2M DAC chip. This thing I think also has a headphone amplifier. It does have a headphone amplifier in it. A lot of other DACs that run double duty as headphone amplifiers, but this to me is a real component, real full-size component. Comes with an aluminum remote control. Very good. This is a great, easy, and I'll even say affordable way to get HDMI ARC into your system, as well as a fully functioning DAC, as well as a fully differential DAC. Love this thing. I don't think enough people talk about it because it's a huge value. If you don't have a ton of analog inputs, this could be your only preamp that you need. All right, my friends, we are getting into the R2R territory. It's a bunch of resistor ladder DAC is what they call them. The Denafreps latest Aries, the 12th. Denafreps just went direct with their customer base. Apparently they have the Aries 15th now. What happened to the 12th? What happened to 13 and 14? It's $1,200. That kind of stinks because it's more expensive than the 12th. Also, since they went direct, are they just keeping the price the same? Because this used to be distributed. Now it's not distributed. Anyway, it's $1,200. It sounds, I haven't heard the 15th though, I couldn't say. But maybe it sounds good. The 12th sounded very good. I love the Denafreps Aries. I think they sound awesome. I think they're airy. I think they're fun. I think they're dynamic. I think they're three-dimensional. I don't like that they went direct, and I don't like that they didn't lower their prices when they went direct. But it is what it is. I still think at $1,200, this is a good value for a DAC. And since it's R2R, you never have to worry about it going obsolete. I still have a few questions about how they're being distributed and them going direct if they have support in the US. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Denafreps and the Aries as being one of my favorite DACs. And coming back to one of my favorite companies, Geshelli Labs, with the Daisy. It is a fully differential DAC as well. And in essence, is two J2s under the same hood. Has 8 op amps inside, which are all swappable. Although my Daisy just has the TI op amps that come stock with it, and I think it sounds fantastic. An incredible, airy, and large presentation of the music. Big push buttons for changing the inputs. Has all sorts of pass-through options, and it is my DAC of choice. I think it comes in around $1,200 or $1,300, and you have to email them directly, them being Geshelli Labs directly, to spec out the unit that you want. They don't just have these sitting on the shelves. Each one of these is made to order. The price will vary depending upon if you get a wooden case or an acrylic case, which is what I have. I have a clear acrylic case, which is awesome. I can't say enough about this DAC, and it is my favorite DAC, and it is my reference DAC at this point, and probably will be my reference DAC for a long time. The takeaway from this list is you can get great sound, all the way from $80 up to $1,300. Personal opinion on DACs, especially Delta Sigma DACs, especially from SMSL and topping. For me, once you get up to the $500 mark from topping SMSL, stay there. If you're going to make the jump to an R2R. Make the jump to something like the Emotiva fully balanced. Make the jump to something like Aries. $200, $300 topping versus $1,000 topping or $1,000 SMSL, I really can't hear much of a difference at all. And I've listened to a lot of DACs. So take it from me. Make the jump to a Daisy. Make the jump to an Emotiva XDA3. Make the jump to a Denafreps. Don't go to an SU9, even though that's a good DAC. I think the SU8 is actually about $500. Don't get the SUX. Save your money or jump up to the ones that I talked about. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Check out my favorite amplifiers from cheap to expensive. Love that video. You will too.